Hello, everyone, and good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you're watching this in the world. And welcome to another episode here of the Writers Hub on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Maybe you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is another Wandering Scribe alumni making her second appearance back on the show. Now, my guest today, as you may remember, is a painfully introverted author whose brain short circuits when asked to share anything about herself. She was born and raised in Central Georgia, where she lives with her husband, 3 cats, and Molly Fish, but currently lives in the state of Florida. Her writing career began with an awful handwritten novel that spanned roughly 50 pages in a blue suede-covered notebook at the age of 11. And since then, she has been honing her craft ever since. And if many of you remember, she is also the author of the incredible book, which was featured in her first interview back in January of this year, The Wind Speaks No Evil. And she is in the process of getting her second book out. Don't know when, but I'm so excited for when it does launch. And in this episode, viewers and listeners, my guest and I are going to be talking about two very important topics that really hit us authors. That is, of course, the dreaded imposter syndrome, and also what we've learned from our launches as authors, which not a lot of people talk about. So joining me here on the show, making her second appearance, is my good friend, fellow author, Emma Stewart. Emma, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here, Gabriel.
Awesome, Emma. Awesome. So before we dive into today's episode, would you like to share with the viewers and listeners what you've been up to since the last time you were on the show 8 months ago?
Yeah. So we were just talking about it previously before we started recording. Like, it literally does not feel like it was only 8 months ago that I was on the
Yes.
show. Last time we spoke, it was January 30th, which was the night before my debut with Evil came out. And since then I have moved states. I was in Georgia, and now my husband and I are in Florida. I've changed jobs, and it's just been getting used to this whole new thing. And I was planning on publishing what I wanted to be my sophomore novel this month, but I unfortunately had to cancel it because of the person who was formatting my files is now ghosting me. So that's a whole, live and let learn experience. That's probably great for this topic. But and I have a couple of other projects that I am working on. I'm still just kind of slowly but surely getting through it because like I said, I'm still getting used to a new job. I'm still getting into the routine and trying to figure out like where I have time for creativity. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I've really just kind of taken it one step at a time, but I'm really happy where I am, and I'm doing the best I can. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And, I very much feel the exact same way of, getting next books out and everything. I am like on crunch time to get my fourth book out, Decimus.
Yeah.
I'm already working with my editor and trying to get that ready for launch in December. Don't have a confirmed date, but it will be launched in December with everything. 64 chapters. For those that don't know the story, it is the longest book I have written to date. And funnily enough, as I said, viewers and listeners, in the beginning, we're going to be talking about the launching of our books or books in general, as well as dealing with imposter syndrome, which comes with it. So I guess let's set the stage for the first part, which is talking about, dealing with imposter syndrome, because all authors deal with that. And I don't remember the exact answer you gave for that question when you were having your author interview on my show earlier this year. But do you remember what your answer was when asked about, dealing with imposter syndrome, especially considering, what it means to be an author in today's digital age, because it's not the same as it was like 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So imposter syndrome is definitely something that every author faces. Now, I will say I am like, I don't, everybody says they're neurodivergent, but I have ADHD and I grew up like this super, super introverted kid. I was a people pleaser. I still am kind of a people pleaser. And so I'm constantly thinking like, well, what if people don't like it? What if people think that my writing is bad? What if? And all of these questions. And that's honestly something that you just have to get used to. That's not something that's ever going to go away. And and it definitely probably played a part in me wanting to cancel publishing for my upcoming book. Now, it truly was not ready for publishing. Like, I know objectively it wasn't ready for publishing. I've already reached out to the editor who edited The Wind Speaks No Evil, and he's going to take a look at it, look under the hood, and see what all things we can workshop and what things need to stay. But as far as that innate fear, like, well, what if people don't like it? What if people don't like it? And I can say all day long that I don't care what anyone thinks. And it's like, that's just something that's in your subconscious, especially just as a person who has grown up being a people pleaser and always afraid to fail and all of these other things. And as far as like just being an author, that's just something that you have to get used to. And I don't want to say it's something that you have to get over, but if you want your work to be out there, you have to grow a thick skin. And so that imposter syndrome, even after I've already published my first book and it's already done a lot better than I honestly expected it to. But still, it's like I said, it's just something that's always going to be there. It's kind of just a part of you. And it's something that you kind of make room for rather than get over. Like, it's something you make space for. And yeah, it's something you make space for. It's not something that's going to like you take a pill and it'll magically go away, or you read the right self-help book and you'll learn the magic phrase. And it's like, oh, I can do anything. It's part of being human, really.
Yeah.
Not even really just much of an author.
That is very true, Emma. That is very, very true. And I definitely think people don't really understand being an author is, and all the careers of the creative side, the liberal arts side of career, being an author is probably one of the most lonely occupations in the world. And disclaimer, I'm only using this for like the creative side.
Yeah.
Being an author, it is the most lonely occupation ever, because for people like Emma, myself, and many others, we are constantly, in our rooms, spending hours and hours trying to hone our writing, trying to perfect our voice, whatever that may be, and doing all these things of trying to figure out who our audience is, what our genre is. All these things come into play. And sometimes that can be overwhelming to us. And especially with social media. Social media is a huge tool for us authors, but it also, as I've said on numerous shows and other interviews, it heightens our imposter syndrome. It heightens our anxiety, because using Instagram as an example, that is like a treasure trove of indie authors. I am not even joking. It is absolutely insane. And seeing all these books come out, all of these other titles. And I think probably when discussing imposter syndrome, the big thing that I've really discovered is when you write a book that you think is completely original, only to find someone has written a book similar and possibly a better version of that book. And that could be very intimidating to that. So, Emma, I'm actually very curious, almost like a reflective aspect. Would you say that pretty much when you were getting your book published initially in the beginning, that you were nervous of if people may be writing something similar, or you're going to stumble across something that read eerily similar to your book?
Honestly, that was actually something that I didn't really think about that much. Because something I struggled with a lot with marketing my book was something that people try to do is like they say, oh, well, what are comp titles? What are comp titles? If someone
Mm,
liked this book, would they like your book? And that was something that I super struggled really hard with because I couldn't come up with any comp titles. I still can't give you any comp titles. I can say like, well, it has like the thriller element of this book and the romance element of this book and all this other stuff. But like the books that I would find myself trying to grab those pieces from were so on opposite ends of the spectrum that
mm,
was something that I just could not wrap my head around. Like I've never even tried to
right.
honestly try to recommend comp titles, and that often leaves me having to kind of tropify it almost. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
well, if you like these tropes, these are in it. But at the same time, it's just, I don't know. Now, I do see a lot of, like, I follow a lot of like romantasy and fantasy authors and science
Same.
fiction authors. And those are definitely genres where the tropes really kind of reign king when it comes to marketing, because those are the things that really get you into those broader audiences. Like, because the traditionally published science fiction and fantasy books, they have all those. And so it's like, oh, well, if you like it in like the One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crown series, maybe you'll like it in my book. And so I see a lot of like similar things. Now, that does kind of scare me away from trying to write in those genres because it's such a diverse genre. Someone somewhere has written something similar to what you have cooking in your head because everything's been tried. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't put your own spin on it and put your own unique twist and your unique voice in it, but that's just something like we're human and we just tend to do things similar to each other because that's just how our brains work. It's not because if it's lack of originality, and we draw inspiration from everything that we consume. Like,
Mhm.
and like I was saying earlier, yeah, I couldn't really recommend comp titles, but that doesn't mean I wasn't inspired by similar books that
Right.
I've read. It's just hard for me to articulate that kind of that kind of thing, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I also like that you brought up the discussion of comp titles because it definitely leads into another thing when it comes to imposter syndrome as well as marketing our book.
Yeah,
And I know we've seen from a consumer perspective books that have had titles or little messages saying, oh, the next J.K. Rowling or the next Lord of the Rings. From a reader's perspective, that's enticing.
yeah,
But over the years, from an author's perspective, I've come to realize that that is probably, in my opinion, a 50-50 split of how well people are going to receive that book.
right,
Because be considered a, I don't want to say a successor, but we'll use that in like the loosest terms of, let's say,
right.
Professor Tolkien or Frank Herbert's Dune or Brian Sanderson of Aragon. I mean, those
Mhm.
guys and many more are titans in their respective genres and fields of the literary world. And
Yeah,
to have that comparison, it may be a nice little ego boost,
yeah,
but that also heightens our imposter syndrome, especially if people who have read those books by those authors have an expectation that the book, your book, is going to read the exact same way. And I
yeah,
definitely think we can agree, Emma, that for all authors, when we write our books, we are, yes, we're always going to be inspired by, everything around us.
yeah,
But we shouldn't necessarily try to be like anyone else. We shouldn't write like anybody else. We should try to write our own voice. But I know that that's a big issue because many people struggle with, well, what is our voice as an author among many things? And I'm actually curious, has anyone ever made comparisons to your book from like one that they've read from like a fellow author or a fellow reader?
honestly, the people who have read my book that I've talked to, they have not drawn any similarities between, at least not my writing style, to other authors. But something that I read, or it could have been a tweet or something that I heard, something I saw on the internet years ago. And the quote goes, I don't want to be the next J.K. Rowling or the next Brandon Sanderson or the next Karen Slaughter. I want to be the first E.M. Stewart. So, and that's something that I really try to aspire to is like, yeah, we do get inspired by authors that we love, by books that really changed us, but you want, like, because you're a unique human being and you want your voice to kind of stand out from the rest. Now, with everyone trying to stand out from the rest, it obviously, it kind of gets drowned in the noise. And that's something that you kind of have to acknowledge, especially as an indie author who doesn't have all of the marketing and sales team and all of the other things of traditionally published books. You just have to acknowledge, like, you're going to find your little niche, your little corner where you meet people and they want to read your books and they enjoy your books. And sometimes that's as far as you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah. So I've made friends on social media, and social media, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like you make a ton of friends, you really find your readership there, but at the same time, you feel like you're drowning because you feel like you're screaming into the void because your video only got 500 views. And like, honestly, if 500 people came up to me and was like, hey, I saw your video and I liked it, I would probably drop dead. Like, that's insane to think about. But when it's just those tiny little numbers on a screen, it just makes it seem so insignificant. And yeah, so being in, honestly, just finding your place on the internet and just kind of in the world, that's something that can really, it can either inspire you to grow out of your imposter syndrome or it can exacerbate it.
Absolutely. And I definitely think when we focus on imposter syndrome, I think it also boils down to, why do we become authors to begin with? A majority of us who get into this industry are very passionate about storytelling, but we're also realistic about being an author. What I mean by that, viewers and listeners, well, as many of you have probably seen in previous interviews, being an author is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It absolutely is not. It boils down to two things. Do you want to be an author or do you want to be known as an author? Two very different goals, two very different business mindsets. And ultimately, yes, they do lead to the same end goal, which is literacy acclaim. But at the end of the day, what kind of author do you want to be? Do you want to be an author who writes just for the sake of writing as a hobby, or do you want to try to build a career of it? And even from building a career of it, you have to be, again, realistic. It's not an industry you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to struggle a lot. One out of, maybe, I could be wrong with my estimation or an exaggeration, let's say 1 out of 500 authors becomes a bestseller. That is probably not the best estimate, but it does get the point across that it's a 50-50 chance in this industry you're going to be a success. And tying that back into imposter syndrome, we kind of had this belief that saying, oh, we are writers, our book's going to be out there, we're going to get all the recognition. I was like, oh, people are not reading this. We spent a lot of time on, bringing this book to life. No one's really taking it seriously, or there's not a lot of reviews. All of that weighs heavily on us. And then, of course, social media doesn't really help that in any capacity. In fact, it enhances the negativity to the point where it just becomes absolutely exhausting. And as I'm sure you probably have fellow writers in your inner circle, Emma, who have probably left writing for good because it got too much for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really, really like that comparison you made. Like, do you want to be an author or do you want to be known as an author? And I think that that's a question that far too few of us have ever asked ourselves. Because, like, in a certain capacity, I have asked myself that because I've been writing since I was a teenager. And I can look back at old stuff that I wrote as a teenager and I can sift through and be like, oh, well, this one line was really kind of cool. And I can be like, yeah, that was really good. But I know that stuff that I wrote when I was 17, if it ever will be ready for publishing, it's not that good. But it's okay because I did it because I was passionate about it. And it was something that it was a tool that I used to kind of help navigate the world and how my brain reacts to the world and all of the awful things in it. And that's something that you have to just kind of acknowledge. Like, you're probably not going to be famous. You're probably not going to make a crap ton of money publishing books. Like, I think I've made maybe $200 and I've sold like 130 books, maybe somewhere in that range. But at the same time, it's like, I wrote a book and I published it and people have read it and people have liked it. And honestly, that's what I was kind of in publishing for, you know? And writing's a hobby. It's always been a hobby, and it's a comfort to me when the world feels like it's on fire, as it so often does nowadays. I can just dive into my Scrivener project and just kind of let my thoughts bleed out until everything's kind of calm again. And at the end of the day, it's for me, it's for me. And I would love to be known as an author. I would love to have a career as an author where I can live in some cabin off on this gorgeous mountainside and just drink tea and never have to interact with a human soul besides my husband. All of that kind of fun stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, I get what I want out of it. And I think that's something that we just need to ask ourselves, like, do we want to do this because we love it or because we want recognition for it?
Yes.
And the recognition piece is definitely so tempting. Like I said earlier, with social media, I find myself feeling like I'm screaming into the void because I don't get as many likes as I want, and I don't get as many shares as I want. I'm not blowing up. I'm not going viral, but I'm still writing. I'm still doing it. And that's definitely something that I have to make peace with because, not to toot my own horn, I think my writing's good. I don't think it's that bad. I think people would like to read it if they were exposed to it, but I am one voice in a sea of screams that is social media. So I can't really expect any more of it.
Very true. Very, very true, Emma. And from social media, that actually is a perfect launching point to the next part of this discussion, the part 2, which is what we've learned from launching our books. And I think among many things when it comes to marketing our books, how we launch our books is among probably the biggest, because not all of us know how to launch our books or when to launch it. Almost everyone that I've interacted with has talked about, oh, you have to launch 30 days in advance before your official release date, or launch in the middle of the year, or sometime toward the end of the year. There's like a science to it. And there is, viewers and listeners, to a degree, there is a percentage of when people go looking for new books and what genres gain the most attention. Spoiler, it's romance fantasy. That genre dominates the industry every time. But I digress. Getting back to the topic of launching our books, we're authors. We are storytellers. When it comes to marketing, unless you've had prior experience of launching a book, you don't know what to do. It's trial and error. Like, I'll be the first to say this. It took me till my 3rd book, which many of you know is Michael, Last Angel of Earth, that I actually decided to put effort into launching it. My 1st book and my 2nd book, The Gathering and Ammon, Son of Persia, I just published those and just let them out into the wild, and I didn't do anything. I did get some sales, but not as much as I would have gotten had I put in the effort. But even still, even looking at Michael, that was probably the most I've ever made. I think I've sold about maybe 50 copies
Yeah.
in total from 2024, late 2024, early 2025. And it's been a grind. It has been an absolute grind. I'm constantly refining, when do I open beta applications? When do I accept ARC applications?
Yeah.
And all that stuff, which all plays in. And Emma, I would just like to hear your thoughts on this, and if you could share your experiences with launching your books and what you've learned from it and what you would have done differently.
Yeah. So my first one definitely did not know what I was doing, especially being an indie author, where writing and publishing books, especially in like movies and fiction, is definitely seen as like this whole production. It's like you have to talk, you have to get an agent, and you have to have like this huge book signing, and there's a whole production with it. But in real life, and especially for an indie author, it's just you, and you just have to figure things out. And so I went from writing my first draft all the way to writing my final draft. I had to do it was a lot of trial and error. I did go through a professional editor, which I do very, very much recommend to anyone who is watching. And so I did go through a professional editor, and then I think I wrote another 2 drafts after my professional edit. And even once that was ready, I had to design the cover. I had to do the interior formatting. I had to make sure that my listings were correct. Like I had to get everything ready, make sure that Draft 2 Digital wasn't finicky about my files, and then send crazy corrupted files out on publishing day. And I had to make sure that the spine was aligned right on the book cover. And on top of all of that, it was just me doing the marketing, just me with my tiny little Instagram account with like maybe 500 followers, which took me like a good 8 months to gather up. And like literally just starting out with my first post on Instagram, that first post that I ever made now has like 150 likes. But when I first published it, I think I got like maybe 5 likes on it because I had no followers and I had never interacted with anyone. But slowly but surely, people started like arriving at my page. And I remember I freaked out the first time I got the notification that said such and so started following you from your reel. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to go viral. And I did not go viral, but still, it's just those little milestones that you really get excited about when you don't really know what the hell you're doing. And
yes.
Yeah. So definitely marketing was a huge, huge piece of it. And I thought the second time around I'm going to put together what my delisted sophomore novel was. This is Blood on the Ice. I thought that I had a better grasp on the marketing because it's like, okay, well, this is what worked for The Wind Speaks No Evil. Maybe I can try this. Maybe I should open up ARC applications earlier because with The Wind Speaks No Evil, I had like 5 ARC readers. And then I did better this time. I had 9 ARC readers for this one. But then everything just kind of went sideways because the person who was supposedly formatting my interior files that I paid money to ghosted me. And so I'm like literally emailing her like, hey, what's going on? I hope you're okay, but hey, I paid you money to do something and I'm still waiting. And so I had to send, like, I literally just sat right here at my desk and I was crying, typing out emails. It's like, I've made the decision. I can't move forward with publishing because I had to, in a time crunch, slap together a book myself. Like I had to do all the interior formatting myself just in case that other person that I paid to do it didn't deliver, and she didn't. And so I was like, okay, I guess I have to do this myself. And so I'm formatting, I'm proofreading, and I'm reading through, and I'm just like, this is a mistake. This is a mistake. And so like it was a Saturday night. I had like 3 glasses of wine. It was like, it felt like the worst day of my life. I was like, oh, I'm never gonna be a writer. And then like I had like a moment of clarity, like maybe the next day. And it's just like, what am I talking about? I already published a book. Like I already have a book out. And it just goes to show, like, even if you've done it before, it doesn't mean that you know what you're doing and you're never going to need help and you're never going to want to ask advice or anything like that. I'm still learning. I still am going to take this to a professional editor. I'm taking it to the editor who did The Wind Speaks No Evil. And like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have some experience, but not a lot. And so every mistake that I made is just a notch in my belt. Like, okay, that doesn't work. I got to try something else. So
I 100% agree with everything you just said, Emma. And ultimately it boils down to, what is it? Trial and error. Because again, we are writers. We are
yeah,
not businessmen. We are not savvy. We are not very super technical on social media when it comes to, having all of these things, with our books, like clicks, tropes, baiting readers in. We aren't like that. That is not our forte. And that also increases our imposter syndrome, because like, oh, we're marketing it as this style of book, but it's not. Are people actually going to, take me seriously as a writer? Are they going to, stay for the whole end of the story? A lot
yeah,
of that plays in, and we put a lot of hard work into, our story, from like our social media posts and all that stuff. And again, on that note, we're not savvy with that either. We just do what we think is, what's trending, what's, interesting at the time. We try to look at what other authors are doing and try to add to our own arsenal. But as I said before, viewers and listeners, it's all about trial and error and really trying to find your voice. And as authors, we do have moments where, taking a little tangent here, from imposter syndrome, that also leads to a writer's block moment where it's like, I don't know what to do anymore. I am absolutely stunned. So I'm actually curious, Emma, in your career as a writer, did you ever have that kind of realization where either social media was too much, or just looking at the status of the book, coupled with other things that may have been happening in your life at the time,
yeah,
pushed you into that sort of still state where you didn't know what to do?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm working on, I do have a couple of other books besides Blood on the Ice that's on the back burner right now. I have one, it's a science fiction one, and I'm working on the second draft, and the first draft, it's doing its job. It's existing, which is what it was supposed to do, because you can't edit a blank page. But in my initial read through, where I'm like printing it out and writing notes, like, why is he saying this? Why is she doing this? And I realized I had to scrap like 60% of the plot of that book because it didn't make any sense. And so I'm having to go back through and not only rewrite the scenes that I have to keep, because like, it was a first draft. Like, your first draft is never going to be good. I don't care
No, it is
if you're the
not.
most accomplished writer on the face of the planet. First drafts are not good, and it's
Mm-mm.
okay. It's a rite of passage. It's something that we all have to suffer with. But I've been going through that, and while I've tried to like kind of plot a little bit, like a very bare bones skeleton for this second draft, I've been very, very slowly picking away at the scenes that I'm writing one at a time, and I'm realizing I'm in a rut. Like, the first draft is like this huge gash in the ground, and I'm very slowly having to kind of climb my way out. And a lot of times I feel like I'm continuing in the rut, and so I've had to step away. Like, I've been supposedly working on that draft for almost like 6 months now, and I
Mm.
still am not even halfway through this second draft, and I might have to take another 6 months until it's finished. And then once that draft's finished, I'm going to have to let that sit and probably have to do it all again. And that's part of the labor of love of being a writer, is that you
Yes.
have to just constantly, like, you're sifting through a bucket of crap. You're trying to find like these tiny little pieces of like gold. Yeah. And And sometimes it feels impossible, especially with social media. And I felt like a huge part of my recent mental block with having to cancel my other book, especially with social media, is like when you have to announce that you're canceling a book, it feels like you're announcing that you failed.
Right.
And I can say over and over, like, well, failure is a part of life. It's part of being human. It's okay. Like, that still doesn't make it hurt less, you know? And
Mm,
even though I've gathered my strength and I am moving on, I have a plan on moving forward with it, but still, it's just the fact that I had to make that new plan. It hurts. It's like a slap in the face. And it's never anything that anyone wants to deal with, but it's I just have to deal with it, you know? And
yeah,
yeah.
that is very, very true. Where I think you're probably the first author that I've ever had on the show that has, openly say, they've had to take a book off sale or off the market temporarily. And, a lot of people don't really understand that. They
Yeah.
would assume that it does mean, oh, that's a failure moment, but it's not. And
Yeah.
absolutely not. It's a realization that, you know, it's not the book that I want to promote. It's not the book that I want to showcase. I have to take a step back. But then again, going back to this notion of imposter syndrome, we're then in this state of like, well, what do I do now? I already took it off the market, making the decision that, it's not ready, it's not good. Is it because of the story itself, or is it because I, the author, am having second thoughts? It's a multitude of factors. It's a multitude of many, many things. And then launching again our books, I firmly believe that as authors, we decide when we're ready to showcase our books. Now,
Yeah.
as I've said earlier in this interview, I made the commitment to get my book ready before the end of the year. I'm already with my editor working on the second round of edits. And once the book is finished, then I will be working with her again as a beta reader and ARC reader and have that application open.
Yeah.
And I can just do the best that I can. And whatever happens, happens. And I will say this, though, on the more positive side of social media, I have gotten good feedback of Decimus. A lot of people are really excited about this. And this goes into a topic which ties everything together, is the notion that the first book is going to be the start of your legacy. I think that greatly influences our imposter syndrome and greatly reflects how we approach marketing and launching our books.
Yeah.
We have this belief as authors, or what's been told, that our first book is the book that's going to make us famous. That is not the case always. Sometimes it's our fifth book that really gets our name out there. And that
Yeah.
can be a hard pill to swallow, because here you are, you've written a book, your first book, you spent the blood, sweat, and tears, and you didn't get anything. Then you wrote another book so many years later. Of course, you're a different author. And that is the one that people most remember you for. It's
Mhm.
very tough and very difficult to really
Yeah.
comprehend. But Emma, I would just like to hear your thoughts on this final notion, tying it all back together with launching one's book and dealing with imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like how you pointed out how oftentimes your first book isn't what you're famous for. And that's even if you become famous, because like I
Yes.
said earlier, there's so many great books out there. It's like you're throwing your book into an ocean of other great books. And sometimes your book gets discovered and it gets famous, and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that's something that a lot of authors struggle with, is they think that their first book is the end all be all. They think
Mm,
that, and they even sometimes think it lives and dies on launch day. Like when you've been marketing it for like 2 months, it's like, oh yes, my book's coming out on this day, and then they're watching the sales and like maybe 8 people buy a copy. and it feels like, oh my gosh, nobody wants to read this. This is awful. I'm horrible. I should never pick up a pen again. And you can't do that because, for one thing, if anyone knows better than me, or if anyone knows it's me, the algorithm is not kind. Like it will bury your reels, it will bury your posts, and eventually you will find the right readers through organically like commenting and like actually forming friendships with people that you meet on the internet. Like my most loyal readers are people who I've read their work, I've reviewed their work, and it's really, we got to lift each other up if we're going to try and make it as authors. And that first book, it's like, yeah, I'm proud of it. It's my first book. Like, this is a huge part of my life, and it consumed my life for almost 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, and eventually you move on to the next project. It's just like, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you think, you don't really think about the future that much. And then you get in middle school and you're just kind of learning how to be a human and interact with other people. And you're thinking, oh, wow, it can't get better, or it can't get worse than this. And then you go on to high school and you have the same thought, and then college, and then your first job, and then your second job, and then you get married, then you have kids and all this other stuff. Eventually your first book is just going to be a notch in your belt. And that's all it's going to be. And you can still love it just as much. I love The Wind Speaks No Evil. Do I think I could have done with one more line edit? Maybe, but I gave it my all. I poured blood, sweat, and tears into it, and I took it to an editor. I edited it myself a lot, and I put all this love and care into it. So it is something that I'm proud of. But at the end of the day, I can't dwell on it. And especially not if I ever want to get my work out there in the future. I can't be dwelling on who I was when I wrote this first book if I want to have a future and evolve as an author and as a person.
Beautifully said, Emma. And I think that is a perfect ending to leave on this incredible episode of the Writers Hub. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another amazing episode here on the Writers Hub on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. A huge thank you to my good friend, Emma Stewart, for coming back on the show. And Emma, once more, thank you so much for coming back on the show for your second appearance. Where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect? Where can people buy your first book? And do you have any special announcements in the work? Any planned festivals that people can look forward to for this year or potentially next year?
Well, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is @theragingpantser. My catchphrase is like a raging alcoholic, but I don't drink that much. And my website is emstewartwrites.com, and it has listings for Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, all of those other good things. And that's where you can buy my book. And you can also go to the link in my bio on Instagram. And I'm also available on Indie Reads, which I will happily send you a link, and you can put a link in the description. So.
Absolutely. And if you want to see Emma's first interview here on the show, I will link it right up here to go and check it out. It was a really great interview for the start of 2025. And I think that was probably some of my highest grossing episodes of 2025, I want to say. It was like some of like the highest ones, which I'm very, very happy for. And as always, viewers and listeners, thank you so much for your love and support. If you are looking for your next read for 2025 and potentially 2026, as you may have heard, my 3 books, The Gathering, Son of Persia, and Last Angel of Earth, are now available on Amazon in Kindle format. Michael, Last Angel of Earth is also now available on paperback on Amazon, which I'll provide the link down below. And if you've already read those books and purchased a copy from Barnes & Noble, then definitely place your reviews on Amazon as well. That is a huge boon to us authors. Reviews help us more than anything. So please spread the love, spread everything. And from the bottom of my heart, viewers and listeners, Thank you so much for everything. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with all new episodes coming out later this week. And this is a little PSA announcement, but next week I will have a very special guest from a company that I have been raging about nonstop. If you've watched my Instagram video as well as my recent testimonial and watched it, you know the company that is being referred to. So stay on the lookout for when that interview drops. It is going to be my biggest one to date, as well as a very first coming to the show, the first ever illustrator interview coming to the Wandering Scribe. So be on the lookout for those interviews dropping soon. And until next time, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you all next time. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Bye.